Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us here. For those who don't know me, my name's Richard Betts. I'm the publisher at Real Asset Media and look after all of the content essentially that we're doing, both in terms of events, magazines. We publish Real Asset Insight, Real Asset Impact, and also the Expo Day, which is the daily news at Expo. So if you have news from Expo, do send it to us and we will publish it, or at least aim to publish it as well, along with photos of anything that you've got. Just in terms of the program, day one, we've got a full program. You can see it there. I'm not going to go through it. Day two, we've got a full program, and we've also got a program on day three. So do feel free to join us for all of those. They're happening throughout the whole day here at Expo. I wanted to introduce Courtney Fingar here. We've been working together really over the past 6 to 9 months, looking at the crossover between real estate, real assets, infrastructure, and FDI, and the growing importance of the connection between cities, locations, and institutional capital. And so that's the kind of focus, and over to you, Courtney.
Thank you, Richard. Good morning, everybody. So there's several familiar faces to me, which is wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to come and to kick off Expo with us. So a lot of you know me. For those of you who don't, I'm Courtney Fingar. I'm a long-time foreign direct investment journalist. I've been on the circuit for longer than I would like to admit to, previously with Financial Times FDI magazine and Investment Monitor. I now work independently, but one of my core roles is working with Richard and his team, which I'm really excited about. And that's because they've been covering very well real assets, institutional investment, and that side of the investment world, whereas I've been in FDI. And as those of you who work in investment promotion know, even though there are investment promotion agencies all over the place at MIPIM and EXPO Real, there's often this divide there of the teams and the strategies for attracting investment into real estate and other real assets and bringing in traditional greenfield FDI. Our initiative is to bridge the gap between those two things through events like this, through discussion, but more importantly, through our editorial coverage. The Insight magazine, which is one of the flagship publications of Real Asset Media, you'll see it all over. Please grab one on the magazine rack there. You will find within that our new section that is being built out into its own publication called Real FDI, that is connecting real assets with FDI. We will soon start building our editorial program already for MIPIM, and so we'd love to chat with you about that and how we can help through that amplify the work that you do and get your message to real asset investors, because we feel there's a sort of gap in the FDI media in that bit of messaging. So over to our speakers now, which we will bring up. So the idea today is just to start off your expo by giving you some insights into key aspects of FDI trends, but also how, again, that connects with the type of investment that you are all seeking here. So to start things off, we have a longtime expert in the field of FDI. René and I were arguing over how long ago we actually first met, and we decided we're calling it 10 years, regardless, just to protect the dignity of both of us. René runs his own firm called BCI Global, and he's going to look at the location of science and innovation parks and logistics hubs, and I know that's of interest to pretty much every city and region as you look to attract investment. So he's going to tell us about the trends in that space and help inform your strategies. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Richard and Courtney, for your introductions. When Richard invited me to speak here, and he knows me because I love to present, so I said, is it a 25 or a 45 slide presentation? He said, it's no slides at all. I said, oh, wow, that's something completely different. So what I wanted to do this morning is talk a little bit about what we see happening at corporate investors, because BCI Global is mainly working for companies who want to locate new facilities in Europe, but also in other parts of the world. So whether those are Korean or American or UK firms looking for new investment opportunities, new locational opportunities in Europe. And from those trends, what we see among our client base, talk a little bit about how you could benefit from that. Now, if I had to summarize what we see happening with corporate investors, we call it the DE strategy. It's not the DE from Deutschland, but it's the D from doing something not anymore. And there are 6 things which corporate investors want to de-organize within their company. The first is decoupling from China. We see that a lot of companies want to go away from having too much production capacity in China or in Asia and want to locate closer to their markets. And that has particularly to do with geopolitical tensions, which for many companies is a kind of external challenge which they cannot control, so which they hate. The second D, after decoupling, is de-risking supply chains. So a lot of companies find out that they were so depending during the pandemic on products coming from all over Asia that they said, well, we have to de-risk our supply chain, which in many cases led to higher inventory levels. And these higher inventory levels led to that huge growth in logistics real estate, which we have seen in the last couple of years. So decoupling, de-risking. The third element is de-single sourcing. Also one of the elements companies learned during the last 4 years is that if something happens in the supply chain and you are depending on one supplier of components, sub-assemblies or whatever, you have to stop your whole production. It's already a couple of years ago, but when COVID started in China, within a month, 95% of all automotive manufacturing plants in Europe had to stop production. So companies are looking to de-single source. The fourth element on D is decentralization of production. So what we see is that companies want to set up closer to their market, their production facilities. I will come back to that. It's also often referred to as reshoring, but region for region production, having a manufacturing plant in Europe to cover the EMEA market and having a plant in North America to serve the US market, that's typically what a lot of companies do today. The fifth D is decarbonization. An important element for a lot of companies to decarbonize their supply chain. And by the way, decentralization, being closer to the market, helps also to reach, as a corporate, to reach your CO2 emission reduction levels, because you don't travel that much products anymore between Asia and Europe or between Asia and the US if you produce locally. The sixth D is demystification of innovation, because a lot of companies have set up strict roadmaps, organize their innovation, their R&D efforts in a better way. So 6 trends among corporate investors: decoupling from China, de-risking supply chain by building up your inventory, de-single sourcing, decentralization, decarbonization, demystifying innovation. Now, what these 6 trends mean is that in production, in distribution, in logistics, but also in R&D, we see companies focusing more on efforts in the local market. We did recently a survey published last week. It's on our website, www.bciglobal.com, and it shows that of the companies that we interviewed, about 150 supply chain and manufacturing leaders in the US and Europe, we see that 50% already decided to decentralize production, to reshore, to add more production capacity to Europe. And of the remaining 50% who did it not, 50% we're going to do that in the next 3 years. So we really see that companies are reorganizing their footprint, their manufacturing and distribution footprint all over the place. And that means also you have to be ready for that. And that's not easy, because also take logistics. We have sometimes lack of personnel, we have lack of land where you can build, lack of electricity in some locations. So if you want to benefit from that reshoring trend, the trend that companies want to have more region for region production, you have to make sure that you are ready for that. It will also mean, if you think about it, we are talking about logistics, that the logistics landscape is changing. In the US, there was a study done that if reshoring really would take place to a large extent, the volume of the ports of Long Beach and New York would drop with 25%. Think about that. So that we have a changing logistics landscape if this trend continues, because then it's not only Antwerp and Hamburg and Rotterdam who play an important role. It will be more inland hubs, centrally located logistics regions within Europe, which will play an important role. So an interesting element. My last DE trend was on demystifying innovation. And that's also where, from an FDI perspective, there's an interest to take a closer look at that. One is that companies are also regionalizing their R&D. So not having 1 or 2 large R&D centers covering the whole world, but they are looking for how can we take benefit of talent bases all over the world? How can we take advantage of technology bases of universities or technological institutes all over the world? So companies are looking also to regionalize their R&D efforts. And that's an interesting phenomenon, because if you are working in FDI and you want to attract new tech-driven companies, then you have to make sure that you have the right ecosystem to welcome those companies, but also that innovation and science park and technology parks, innovation campuses, innovation districts, these physical environments where companies and researchers can meet each other more together and really on the other side of the road. That's also an important element which you can boost in your FDI strategy. And it's actually also on Friday morning, we have here in the same booth a session at 10:30 talking about innovation and science parks and how they can help you to attract those companies. So here is the message for this morning. Think about those 6 DE strategies, and I expect you, if I talk later on with you, that you repeat them all 6. So I hope that you got it in your mind. Decoupling, de-risking, de-single sourcing, decentralization, decarbonization, demystifying innovation. And that what you can do, take advantage of that changing corporate investment idea, the investment intentions to be more on a region for region level, and identify how you can benefit, how you can gain from that trend with new logistics hubs, taking advantage of that more companies set up production in Europe and then also have to distribute it to their customers. But also on the innovation and science park side, because that regionalization of R&D is really something which is happening today where you can benefit from. And that's, Richard and Courtney, my short introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, do have a seat. Thank you so much, René. Really helpful, brief insights, but very valuable. You're going to be so jealous because Jens has slides.
Oh, wow, okay.
Don't know how to tell you this bad
35
news.
or 45?
A quick introduction of Jens. I have to apologize. I have to go moderate another panel, so I'm going to dash off. It's no reflection of Jens' presentation, which, to be fair, I did see 2 weeks ago in Frankfurt. Jens is a director of Germany and Central Europe for EXPO Global, which many of you might know is one of the major FDI consultancies. They conducted a survey and produced a report some months ago called the Innovation Report. They partnered with the World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies. It has some very interesting findings about the strategies of investment promotion agencies and some takeaways to get you thinking about as you spend your next few days here. So over to Jens. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to all of you, and sorry that I have to dash.
Okay.
See you. Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to Munich. Welcome to this year's edition of EXPO Real. Thank you, Courtney, Richard, and also René for introducing a bit the background of today's session. And yes, I do have slides, but I hope not to do death by PowerPoint. So hope that the slides really help to understand the context in which we are operating right now. So who is OCO? Courtney mentioned we are an international FDI advisory firm. We do have offices in all relevant markets to investment promotion, trade services, and of course economic development. So with our offices in Frankfurt and Berlin, we serve the German-speaking and Central European market, and yeah, happy to see some of the partners we work with in economic development, advisory, and so on. Yeah, so the topic is about how to attract foreign direct investment, and René already introduced the corporate perspective and the background. Again, we don't need to go through every point, but important for cities and regions to understand is of course that we have general trends, and I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there might have been a much better setup or framework for an EXPO Real trade show than today, but this poly crisis, really, is what we need to face here. And of course, economic development agencies and promotions need to think of, okay, these general trends, how do they convert to economic impacts? How do these economic impacts might affect our region or FDI flows? There are political actions that are taken or needed to be taken, and of course the investors' priorities that René has laid out, then of course influence a strategy that an investment promotion agency then of course need to react, right? So that's the general framework. Global FDI flows have dropped significantly. I think no surprise, and you might know the numbers, so we are nowhere near where we were before COVID. Right, so you see a bit the split also. Europe has suffered a lot in the last 2 years in terms of FDI flows, numbers of projects. North America as well. the reason for why the Inflation Reduction Act has been also introduced. And I know there's a lot of debate in Europe and Germany about how incentives help as well to attract more foreign direct investment. But not everything is negative, also not for the real estate industry. So there was an uptick, for example, in services for foreign direct investment projects. So there was more than 20% increase in FDI projects into the services industry. So that's a message also for the real estate industry that you might consider. Okay. The next slides will be about the perspective from economic development agencies. And we did a report with WIPA, that's the World Association for Investment Promotion Agencies that you might know and that Courtney is chairing as well. And the question was, okay, how do IPAs and EDOs react to these trends, right? So here we go. There are 5 topics actually that we were told from the 74 respondents that are key priorities, right? So first one, of course, as always, is how do you find new investment priorities? Second is you might need systems that help you to do that, that points to digital tools or innovation. Then the third topic is talent is like the most important location factor right now. So how can you support your investment strategies with talent attraction strategies? Fourth is how do you attract more sustainable investment, right? So I wrote a blog report a couple of months ago. You might have seen it. It's called Greenwashing FDI, because what we see is many EDOs now point to, okay, every project that we attract is like green, right? So, but what is the real green and the real sustainable? And what does it mean for your region, yeah? And the fifth is, how do you monitor all this, right? And how do you report this to your stakeholders? So these are the 5 points, and I will just shortly summarize them here. So what you see is a shift in what are the key priority sectors. So if you were standing here 2 years ago during COVID, of course we would have talked about fintech, tech in general, digital, foreign direct investment, really making a move during COVID. Right now it's energy, it's health, that proved to be like resilient sectors. And of course, investment promotion agencies somehow need to follow the demand and not just follow the own offer of the location. So there is a mix that you need to consider, And then how proactively are you seeking, the potential of, supply chains? And René has pointed out the buzzwords here are, reshoring, nearshoring, and also friendshoring. So what does it mean for your region? And actually, there is a move from corporates to move from just-in-time to just-in-case logistics, right? And there is an opportunity that you need here. And if you see like the respondents in our survey, there is still some room for investment promotion agencies to grow into these fields and to do a bit of a homework towards these sections, right? Next is digitalization. So what you see here in the trends is that, in the investment promotion part, that's actually where many EDOs are already using digital tools, and there are a lot of tools available for lead generation, for marketing, account-based marketing, LinkedIn, Google Ads, and so on. But less EDOs are using digital tools for their own investment facilitation and aftercare services, right? So it's just a question here, to all the investment promotion agencies, how can you think about, implementing digital tools for your own work in reaching out to existing investors better, and there are good examples that we can maybe discuss after the session on how you actually can do this, right? So the questions really, I don't want to go through them in detail, but just give you a bit of maybe topics or headlines for this year's EXPO Real. What is there to discuss, and what can you think about in your meetings here? I touched about talent. So what we see, and you can discuss with every EDO, I think, is that the talent is the most important location factor, and talent is increasingly becoming a rare source, right? So investment strategy, if you have one, that's good, right? But how do you then attract the right talent that your investors need? So what we discuss with clients, many times is, do you have a talent attraction strategy that aligns with your investment attraction strategy, right? And how do you even create more resource with your local universities and so on, and the resources that the investors need in future? So there's also a bit of thinking about that, and maybe you can use also these questions, because our survey shows that more than, or nearly the half of the respondents didn't have a talent attraction strategy, or didn't have anything to do with that. Yeah, and last but not least, sustainable investments. I touched upon that. Greenwashing FDI is a bit the debate, but 64% are not really monitoring the ESG impact of foreign direct investment, right? So there is a difference between labeling FDI as green and really measuring an impact. And also there are good examples in the industry, and you can discuss here at EXPO Real. There are measurement strategies on how to really assess the impact of foreign direct investment and to assess the green or sustainable outcome for your ecosystems. And last point is, how do you measure all of this, right? So the talent part, the ESG part, and so on. So here you see the measures that our respondents, the IPAs from WIPA, marked as, okay, these are the measures that we usually do have, or what we consider as quality FDI. But what is considered as quality FDI, more to this side, is not measured by a large part of EDOs, right? And political stakeholders, of course, are increasingly interested in, what is the exact outcome? What is the effect of these supply chain topics that we are discussing here? And what is the effect, for our region, not just in number of FDI projects or number of jobs, but really impact and outcome, right? So there's always something in here to discuss at this edition of EXPO Real. For everyone who's interested in the exact report findings, you can download it via the QR code. Go to the WIPA website, or just reach out to me and I can send it across. And yeah, more than happy to discuss with you what your challenges are. And yeah, wishing you all a very nice and successful EXPO Real. Have a good time in Munich, and thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Super. Thanks very much, Jens. We're almost entirely out of time. I wanted to leave kind of 5 minutes for you to be able to have chats with Jens and René as well. Just in terms of the Real FDI section that Courtney mentioned is inside Insight, so do take a copy of that. Interesting you mentioned impact there, and the kind of social impact strategies around ESG. That's very much what we're covering in impact, and we also welcome and would like to have contributions from cities about what they're doing, and we do have several sessions over the next couple of days on sustainability, but also on city investment as well.